The ban on the live trade to Indonesia is still dominating agribusiness and paddock chatter. The ABC's Helen Brown is based in Jakarta, and I spoke briefly with Helen earlier today, first about ongoing reaction at the bureaucratic and government level.
We haven't heard a lot from the government recently here in Indonesia, certainly not as much as when the ban was first announced. And initially, when the ban was announced, the reaction was fairly cool and comfortable. You know, they downplayed the announcement. The Agriculture Minister, Suswono, said, well, that's Australia's right to do a suspension of trade, and we'll work with them on getting what they would like and restarting it. And the Trade Minister, Mari Pengestu, was of a similar sentiment, saying that the two countries should work together to create a win-win situation.
Helen, Indonesians are culturally very polite, but do you sense there's something behind that politeness in this issue?
Look, initially when the ban was announced, we were definitely getting the sense that they were angry and they felt that it could have been handled better given the 20-year trade relationship that had been built up. But no one would go on the record about that. There was some confusion about what Australia was asking for, and I think really they were just trying to come to grips with a decision and then work out how they could work with Australia and how quickly things could be moved.
Could this issue widen, Helen? I mean, could there be long-term ramifications for Australia's relationship with Indonesia?
It's hard to say. I think it will depend on how quickly the trade can be resumed. I think a lot will depend on that. My information is that the industry in Indonesia is working very hard to try and get all aspects of its industry up to the standard that Australia is asking for. And, you know, they hope to have finished that very soon. I guess the question then becomes, is that good enough for Australia? And if it isn't, that's when the relationship may well be tested again, or a different phase of this particular issue will be tested.
That's the ABC's Helen Brown in Jakarta. Since I recorded that brief chat, an industry source has told me that lot feeders and importers in Indonesia have not ruled out legal action against the Australian government over the ban. In other beef news, the industry is bracing for more abattoir closures on the back of the JBS decision to shut its grain-fed plant near Toowoomba, Beef City, for 2 weeks. Beef City has a 26,000 head feedlot and can process 1,100 head of cattle a day. It's one of the biggest employers in the Toowoomba-Oki region, and even a 2-week shutdown will have an impact.
1,000 people out of work for a couple of weeks is very significant. It has a flow-on effect, and that raises my concern.
Other abattoirs concentrating on Japan are now signalling their usual midwinter maintenance shutdowns could be extended. The biggest single reason for the problem is our rising dollar and the fact it's making Australia uncompetitive in Asian markets. Look at Japan, for example. Since around the start of the year, Japan has lifted its imports of Australian beef by 3% on the 2010 figure. In the same period, American imports have lifted 53%. But here's some good news. Russia is emerging as a crucial market for Australian beef, especially at the lower end. Latest figures put Russia's beef imports at just over 540,000 tonnes a year. Brazil has the lion's share of the market. Australia's share is a fairly modest 56,000 tonnes, but that is a 354% increase year on year. Now to the sale yards, where the market picked up last week after easing through most of June. Smaller yardings helped. Restockers were encouraged by the lower prices, and the reduced numbers helped override the impact of our rising dollar. But there's still a very nervous edge to the cattle market built around the live export ban, poor demand from Japan, plus the strong possibility of further abattoir shutdowns. So most categories closed on an upward trend. Incidentally, reports from the feedlots would indicate it's a genuine struggle to make a dollar at present. Now, this action left the key indicator up 6 cents for the week at $3.78 a kg. That's up 30 cents on the same week last year. Sheep and lamb markets have slipped again. Numbers available are up and quality is down alongside the colder weather. Those prices are high in historical terms and about square with the prices on offer midwinter 2010. Time now for grain prices, and I'm afraid the news is not good across the board. In fact, it's all negative. In Chicago, the Department of Ag stunned traders by pegging corn supply well above expectations. So corn and wheat reacted with limit downfalls. Soybeans closed down as well. bringing the loss since February to about $1.50 a bushel, but it's the price skid of corn and the spillover to wheat causing most concern. Here's Chicago wheat early February, about $8.63 a bushel. That's about $300 a tonne. The current price represents a fall of nearly 25%. Back home, ASX futures fell, but only slightly. Most of the price damage was done in the early weeks of June. Oil crop prices also suffered, not a huge amount, but the price falls have been steady now for several weeks. So wheat lost another $5, canola dumped $8 and sorghum fell $6. To New York now for the softs, and cotton continues to slide, and surprisingly, sugar lifted a fraction. Cotton spilled more than a cent, although growers would still be pretty happy at that price, and so too would cane growers. That price is holding very well. Finally to wool, where for the first time since Easter, the indicator fell. At the last sale of the season, softer demand was the key, but the increase in the US exchange rate was also a factor. The Eastern Market Indicator closed at 1,409 cents, a fall of nearly 2% on the week. But by any standards, wool has had a remarkable year. The EMI averaged 882 cents for the first 2 weeks of the season. It was 875 cents at the end of September, and it cracked 1,000 by Christmas. It went to 1,325 cents by Easter and peaked at 1,436 cents last week. And next week I'll have that promised analysis of the wool price and where it might be heading. For the moment, though, that's the Landline check on prices.